serious. What is the creepiest, most blood-chilling thing you or someone you know have ever experienced? About 10 years ago, I took my dog out for a short walk. We lived in a rundown but historic part of town, old houses that are either beautifully maintained, abandoned, or generally going to shit. There was a good mix of people in that neighborhood. Anyway, walking the dog, I get about 3 or 4 houses down and stop at the corner while Pony sniffs some grass or whatever. I turn around and suddenly there is a man standing way too close to me. No idea where he came from. I'm usually very aware of my surroundings, and Pony hated strange men. I stumbled a few steps back. I immediately had this absolute bone-chilling sick feeling. He asked me, "Is that a pit bull?" And I replied, "Yes." Then he said, "Oh, she'll protect you." At this point, my body flooded with adrenaline and I turned to run back to my house. I saw my mom standing on the porch and thought to yell to her. She had no reason to come out on the porch. I honestly think she had a bad feeling. I don't know what good me yelling really did, but it was all I could think to do. Like, "Hey look, I'm over here." I've never had such a flight response before, or since that encounter. When I was 16, my parents went out of town for a weekend. It was actually pretty sweet because I got to be king of the castle for the weekend. So I get home that Friday night and just stick around, internet, video games, etc., and start watching TV around dusk. The way our living room was set up was that there was a set of glass doors right next to the television that looked out to the back porch and backyard. The backyard was surrounded by ivy that grew on a hill around a 45-degree angle. So I'm just mindlessly channel surfing and I see some movement outside. At first, I just dismiss it thinking it's a bird or a neighborhood cat or something. But I then notice that whatever is moving is way bigger than a bird or a cat. I go and put my face near the glass and stare into the backyard. And there's some dude just crouching in the ivy looking into the house. Our eyes meet and he has somewhat of an oh shit moment and bolts out of our yard. Scared the shit out of me. My mom had a stalker for years. She was maybe in her early 30s. I was about 3, and my brother was around 1 when this started. My dad would leave for work in the morning, and as soon as he was gone, the calls would start coming in. She'd answer the phone, and some guy would be saying all this horribly sadistic and things about what he wanted to do to my mom. She was beyond frightened and didn't know what to do. Sometimes the caller would describe what she was wearing at that very minute, or describe what she was doing. My parents were struggling financially, so they couldn't just up and move. But my mom started spending more and more time at my dad's mother's house when he was away. The cops got involved, but they couldn't trace the call. Finally, they were able to save up enough money to move. I was about 6 by this time. The phone number was changed and unlisted in the phone book. This was around 1988 when everyone still used landlines. My mom never got another scary phone call, but she had nightmares about it for years. When I was little, I remember going into her bedroom in the morning and she would be sobbing into her pillow. I didn't understand it at that point, but she explained later in life that she'd wake up from a nightmare and just shake and cry. A couple months after we had moved, the cops informed us that they finally caught the guy. It was our next door neighbor's 19-year-old son. He had been in the military but was discharged due to severe mental illness. I guess he was put into some sort of special security home that specializes in mental health. The lead investigator said that the son was obsessed with my mother, and they found a box in his room full of a bunch of photographs candidly taken of her when she was out in the garden or playing with us kids in the yard. It chills me to the bone when I think about it now. Anything could have happened to my mother when my dad was at work, and I'd be too young to help her. On April 18th of this year, I came home from work and began working on some homework. After 30 minutes of homework, my aunt entered my mother's bedroom and began screaming hysterically, ordering me to call 911. Once I was on the line with the operator, she asked me what the nature of my emergency was. I didn't quite know, so I entered my mother's bedroom to find her dead of a heart attack and laying face down on the floor, wedged between her nightstand and her bed. The operator dispatched the paramedics and instructed me on how to perform CPR. In order to do so, I had to flip my mother onto her back. When I grabbed my mother's cold, lifeless arm, I realized that she couldn't be moved, as she was wedged firmly between her bed and her nightstand, and rigor mortis had already set in. I was unable to flip her over, and I had never seen or touched a dead body before. After the paramedics came and told me that nothing could be done, the medical examiner informed my family that she couldn't be seen as she had been laying on her face for so long. It's assumed by my family that she'd hit her head on the way down, as her dentures were on the floor beside her. The combination of her head trauma and the fact that she had been dead for many hours had rendered her unviewable, as deemed by the officer from the medical examiner's office. To answer your question, the sight and feeling of my mother's deceased body is the most chilling thing that I have ever seen. Her memorial is this Sunday. Edit. I really appreciate the condolences and heartfelt messages you've sent me. I'm proud to have a great support network outside of the internet full of people who have put themselves out there for me. I just started my move into my new home and will be sleeping there for the second time tonight. My new home is a spare bedroom of an old music teacher of mine. After his daughter and grandson moved out, I've been fortunate enough to be offered a room free of charge to live in. This is an amazing opportunity, especially for a college student whose job only offers 20 hours a week. I hope only to be able to repay him for what he and his wife have done for me. I've got one. In college, I worked security for extra money. One of my regular assignments was the overnight shift at a metal fabrication factory. One of the primary reasons I was there was to ensure that no one broke in to steal all the valuable metal that was stocked on site, which was an occasional problem. That, in turn, involved checking the perimeter fence for damage at least once a shift. That couldn't be done effectively by camera. It instead required physically walking the fence. So it was that one night I was walking the perimeter fence in the middle of a thunderstorm. My attention was on the beam of my flashlight illuminating the fence as I walked past. So I wasn't really focused on where I was walking, despite walking through grass that was a bit over my waist. Apparently, I just stepped awkwardly on a patch of particularly slick grass or mud as I was heading downhill. But before I knew what was happening, I had slid feet first into an open storm sewer. Some asshole had stolen the manhole cover recently, and the edges around the opening were wet with rain and mud thanks to the storm. Let me just take a moment to explain the storm sewer. First off, it was shaped just like an oubliette. If you're not familiar with what that is, picture a concrete cell that is shaped like a jug. A small opening at the top with sides that slope inward to prevent someone from crawling out. In this case, the bottom was maybe 10 foot squared, and the opening for the manhole was about twice the normal width in the center of the ceiling. There was no ladder attached, and the fall was maybe 20 feet down. At the bottom, the floor was sloped to form two trenches in the shape of a cross. There were sewer channels going off in 4 directions, but they were only maybe a foot wide across and were blocked with metal grates. At the bottom, there were debris, including a number of large broken pieces of rebar. There were several pieces that were pointing straight up. I definitely would have impaled myself on several jagged points of rusty metal had I hit the bottom. So, no way to escape, a long fall and a probable disabling injury at the bottom. I somehow caught myself by hooking the edge of the opening on my elbow as I fell in. I dropped my flashlight to the bottom of the pit before I stopped my momentum, so I had a great view of all that broken rebar below me while I was struggling to escape. Maybe that was the collapsed remains of the ladder. As I tried to get another handhold, my cell phone skipped out of my pocket and hit the bottom. It felt like forever before I somehow pulled myself out from that opening. I don't doubt adrenaline gave me a considerable boost of strength, but even so, I nearly lost my hold on the edge 3 times before I managed to scramble out. I was kinda just jerking my knees towards the opening and jumping a couple inches thanks to the momentum. My free hand kept scrambling for something solid to grab, but I never really found anything. I'm honestly not sure how exactly I pulled myself out just using the surface tension between the mud and concrete and my hands and forearm. It felt like a miracle. All I could think of after I pulled myself out was how I wasn't due to be relieved for another 7 hours. 7 hours before anyone would have started wondering where I was, and that whole time I might have been trapped at the bottom of a pit, impaled on some rods of rebar, in the rain. I also wanted to kill whoever stole that manhole cover. Edit spelling. And yes, I did finish my shift after spending some quality time with a first aid kit and sewing some gashes in my uniform closed. I never did get my cell phone back, though luckily that was my company issued one. Hey, what's up guys, Real Life here, and I know I normally don't do horror, but these were pretty interesting, so I wanted to share them. Maybe I should try it more sometime. Alright guys, if you liked the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again next time.